He stole our inheritance and threw Mom out. You won't believe what happened next. When I offered her to live with me, translated. Komm, jetzt, herüber, die alte Frau auf, wir aus unserem Haus geworfen haben, weil wir nichts mit ihr zu tun haben wollen. I never saw it coming. Not in a million years. One minute I was living my life, the next my world had shattered into a million pieces, all thanks to my good-for-nothing brother. This isn't just a story, it's a nightmare that became my reality. Come over right now, Jackson's voice dripped with venom, and pick up the old woman we ejected from our house because we want nothing to do with her. The phone slipped in my hand. It had been about a month after my father's funeral, and Jackson's call came completely out of the blue. One minute I was catching my breath from grief and the next he was dropping a bomb that detonated my sanity. He had kicked my mother out. He actually had the gall to kick my own mother out and demanded that I take care of her from now on. I was stunned, reeling, unable to immediately grasp the sheer audacity, the monstrous cruelty of what he was saying. You didn't actually kick my mom out of the house, did you? I stammered, desperately hoping it was some sick joke. Come see for yourself, he snarled, and the line went dead. I was furious, still in the middle of taking a bath. Why would you do something so heartless? I screamed to the empty bathroom, knowing he wouldn't hear me. I have no use for Mom. The words echoed in my head, like a cruel taunt. She's just a poor burden, isn't she? Poor burden, that's how he saw her, after everything she'd done for us. The realization punched me in the gut, leaving me breathless and nauseous. There was no inheritance left, he said. We were all getting nothing. Jackson and his wife have been living in the family home all this time, and he was acting like he was the rightful owner. It was outrageous, beyond comprehension. It's getting dark soon, Jackson had threatened. If you don't come to pick her up, Mom will be sleeping on the streets. Jackson Warren, I screamed into the dead phone line. How could you be so cruel? I'll never forgive you for this, Jackson. He hung up without a word, the coward. Subsequent calls went unanswered, straight to voicemail every single time. When I finally reached my mother on her cell, she confirmed everything Jackson had said. She was scared and humiliated. Burning with a mixture of anger and worrying, I had no choice but to drive over to where she was stranded. I am Lily, a 27-year-old woman in a hurry. In the beginning of my marriage, living with my parents, in our family home. For 2 years, Jackson and his wife have been roughly moved in. My older brother, Jackson, 8 years my senior, occupied a spacious mansion inherited from my grandfather, with extensive land. There should be no discomfort in living together, but it felt more like an occupation. I was not satisfied with the situation and argued with Jackson, but my husband, well, he's always been the peacemaker. Around that time, my father was diagnosed with cirrhosis of the liver. I wanted to spend his last moments with him, to be there for him, but that didn't happen the way I wanted. The disease consumed my father rapidly, a cruel and agonizing descent that ripped my heart to shreds. My heart ached knowing that my mother must be in much more pain than I was to have my own brother treat us this way amidst all the fresh sorrow. What would happen next was truly shocking, a betrayal I never could have foreseen. An hour later, when we arrived at our family home, Mom was sitting desolate on a suitcase in the garden, her face etched with defeat. The front door was locked, barring her from the only place she'd known as home for decades. Jackson, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I gritted my teeth, a wave of fury washing over me. I opened the door with my key and stormed inside with Mom, ready to unleash hell. Jackson and Olivia were sprawled on the sofa, nonchalantly watching TV as if nothing was amiss. The scene was a slap in the face, a deliberate act of disrespect that made my blood boil. Is this some kind of joke? I demanded, my voice trembling with rage. How did you get in? Jackson sneered, not even bothering to look at us. I used my key to open the front door, I retorted, dripping with sarcasm. Isn't it obvious? Jackson dismissively slipped my mind, and his mind was so warped. Leave your key, he ordered. Take the old lady and go. This isn't funny, Jackson, I said, my voice shaking. How can you be watching TV after kicking your own mother out of the house? Mom has a right to live here. What are you talking about, Jackson? I continued. Infuriated by his dismissive attitude, I stood in front of the TV, blocking his view. Mom has a right to inherit this house. If you can't live with her, you should be the one to leave, I insisted, my voice rising with each word. Shut up, Jackson snapped, his face contorting with rage. This house is mine. Dad gave it to me when he was alive. He spat those words out like poison, and the shock of them landed like a physical blow. I've never seen someone look so proud about something so twisted. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. There's no way Dad gave this house to you before he died. Mom also looked puzzled, shaking her head in disbelief. This couldn't be happening. Jackson, with a smug grin on his face, disappeared into a room in the back and returned, bringing out an envelope. Look at this, he announced triumphantly, waving the envelope in the air. What's this? I asked, taking the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was an inheritance document prepared by a judicial scribe, along with the real estate ownership certificate. According to the document, the property had been transferred to his name a month before Dad passed away. Mom and I were shocked. As we looked at the documents, we were left with more questions than answers. Why would Dad do something like this? Mom asked with trembling voice. Asking a departed person didn't yield an answer. Dad was gone, and we were left to pick up the pieces of this shattered reality. Why would he hand over the house to Jackson without discussing it with Mom? Jackson simply shrugged, a smug grin plastered on his face. Easy. He gave it to me while he was still alive. He preferred me over both of you. That can't be. I can't believe it, I exclaimed in disbelief, my mind struggling to comprehend the betrayal. No matter how many times we checked the document, the property was undeniably in Jackson's name. The reality was a cruel twist of fate. Is there no other inheritance? Nothing left for Mom? This can't be real, I whispered, fighting back tears. You're not just worrying about Mom, Jackson sneered. You realize there's no inheritance for you either, right? I wasn't after Dad's inheritance, but it was still a shock to learn that he had left me nothing. The realization was like another punch to the gut, leaving me gasping for air. This is too cruel. Feeling a mix of frustration and sadness, I watched in horror as Olivia began laughing heartily, rubbing salt in our wounds. Now get lost, Jackson ordered. You have no business here. Jackson and Olivia forcibly drove us out of the house, shoving us out the door like unwanted trash. Ouch that. Mom cried out as she fell, scraping her palm when they pushed us out. Tears of frustration welled up and fell, blurring my vision with rage and despair. Her eyes filled with sorrow as well. Mom, I choked out. Our place is small, but I don't want to impose on Mason, she said, referring to my husband. I'll find somewhere else to stay. Don't worry. I just can't leave you like this, I said, wiping my tears with the back of my hand. I'm going to call Mason right now. Just wait. I grabbed my cell phone and dialed my husband's number, praying he wouldn't turn us away. From the other end of the line, I heard Mason's voice. Hello, Mason, I said, my voice trembling. I apologize for calling out of the blue, but my mom has been kicked out of her house. I explained everything to my surprised husband, my voice cracking with emotion. He hummed in understanding, a wave of relief washing over me. I held my breath, waiting for Mason's response. Our apartment is pretty cramped compared to Mom's house, I said, trying to manage expectations. It might not be the most comfortable. Yeah, our place is tiny, but I don't mind, Mason replied, his voice warm and reassuring. Bring your mom over. We've had times where we were taken care of at home too. In times of trouble, we should help each other out. Thank you so much, I sobbed, overwhelmed with gratitude. My husband is a kind man with a big heart. He could never leave someone in need, especially not my mother. Quickly, we took Mom to our apartment. However, living with 3 people in our small apartment was certainly cramped. We didn't have enough savings to buy a house yet, and the future looked bleak. I feel bad for Mom, cooped up in this small space. After a while, my mom's cell phone rang, breaking the tense silence. She hung up and said something we never could have imagined. Why don't we live in my Highland condominium? She suggested, her eyes twinkling. Wait, what? Highlands condominium? I was speechless. My mother began to explain, much to our surprise. Apparently, my grandfather, who was a wealthy man, was quite a spendthrift and spent all the money he made in a day. In order to deal with his constant borrowing, my grandmother had no choice but to sell off their farmland to make ends meet. According to my mom, my father was also a big spender, so she was really worried about our future. That's why I invested in real estate with the money. I was taking it back when my mom revealed that in addition to the Highland condominium, she also possessed a significant amount of money from her real estate investments. My husband and I were absolutely stunned, reeling from the revelation. I can't even comprehend this. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, she said softly. Anyway, I just got a call from the management company that there's a vacancy in the Highland condominium. We can move in next month. What do you think? Mom, there was no reason to refuse such a generous offer, especially since the Highland condominium had 3 bedrooms, a living room, and a dining room. It was much more comfortable than our current situation. Thank you, Mom, but we may only be able to pay as much rent as we are for the apartment, I said, feeling a pang of guilt. You don't need to worry about that, she replied with a smile. Oh, I need to tell the landlord that we're moving out. Preparing to move into our new home, the condominium, filled us with a sense of hope and anticipation. One day, Jackson and Olivia suddenly appeared in front of the condominium entrance. Why are you living in the Highland condominium? Jackson demanded, his eyes wide with disbelief. Did you hit the jackpot or something? Of course not, I replied calmly. The Highlands condominium has always belonged to my mom. Jackson and Olivia were both taken aback, their mouths agape. What? They explained in unison, looking at the towering condominium and disbelief. Their confused and goofy expressions were priceless and I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Jackson's face flushed red with anger. "That wretched woman," he exclaimed. "I can't believe she was hiding this from us while pretending to be poor." "My mom never said she was poor," I retorted. "You just assumed it. And she inherited a large house. What's wrong with that?" "That's not the point," Jackson yelled. "Don't yell here," I warned. "It's disrespectful to the other residents." Ignoring his outbursts, Olivia explained why she wanted me to contact Mom now after kicking her out. Regardless, I insisted on them seeing my mother, but I couldn't let them do anything evil to my mom. "You must be joking," I said with sarcasm. "If you hurt Mom again, I couldn't bear it. If you have something to say, you can tell me," I added firmly. But the Jackson couple kept insisting on seeing my mother without revealing why. They seemed rather flustered, fidgeting nervously. "Weren't you living comfortably in your huge family house, just the two of you?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "It's none of your business, Jackson," I continued. "Fine, if you don't want to tell me, that's okay. I have to go now." "Bye," I said, trying to walk past them. Suddenly, Jackson grabbed my arm tightly, his grip painful. "Ouch, let me go," I exclaimed, struggling to break free. "Just call Mom," he demanded, his eyes blazing with desperation. "Absolutely not," I retorted, my voice trembling with anger. "I'll call the police," I threatened, hoping to scare him off. The Jackson scoffed at me. "There's no way the police would come for a simple family argument. Even if they did, there's no way you can sue me for just grabbing your arm." I had to admit, calling the police over something so minor might not only be futile but also disruptive to others. Feeling bad, I ended up not saying anything. "Fine," I relented. "I'll tell my mom, but only if you tell me why you're here." Jackson and Olivia hesitated before Jackson spoke up. "Just for the AC, the electric bill is $500. "This is no joke," Jackson said. The Jackson family home, the traditional style house, had more than 8 rooms, so it was no surprise that utility costs were high. It was a particularly hot summer. "I thought you would have known that from the start," I retorted, unable to suppress a smirk. "How would we have known?" Jackson whined. "Mom used to pay the bills." Jackson scratched his head frantically while Olivia fumed. "Do you know the property tax for that house is $5,000 a year?" Olivia added, exasperated. "What?" Jackson and Olivia yelled. "I can't believe you didn't know," I exclaimed, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Why would an old house like that cost so much? How are we supposed to pay that? This is going to be tough going forward." "Wait, is that true?" The color drained from the Jacksons' faces. Olivia burst out in anger, pointing a finger at Jackson. "It's your fault for not doing your homework." They started fighting right in front of me, oblivious to the scene they were making. "After all the trouble we went through to get Dad to change the name on the house." "This is too much," Olivia exclaimed. "That's what you get for doing something so underhanded," Olivia retorted. "But even Dad said clearly that it would be better to give it to me than to your mom." "I can't believe it," I muttered, disregarding my mom and me. Seizing the moment, I made an outrageous request. "You can have the house, let's exchange it for this Highlands condominium." "What are you talking about?" Jackson yelled. "This isn't mine. It belongs to Mom." "Please talk to Mom for me," Jackson begged me. "I promise to pass on your message," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" Jackson snapped, his tone incredulous. I gave up on shopping and started to head back into the Highlands condominium through the entrance, but the Jacksons tried to follow me, their audacity leaving me speechless. "I'll sue you for trespassing," I threatened. "You just told us that wouldn't be a legal issue," Olivia countered with shock. It seems like they wouldn't get the message until they suffered a real consequence, so I was in exasperation. I called out to the management office next to the entrance. "Excuse me, could you please call security? Someone who's not a resident of the Highlands condominium is trying to force their way in." The security guard, who was on standby 24/2, walked to me with a large security guard in front of them. The Jacksons were startled and backed off a bit. I warned them once again to avoid the same thing happening in the future. "I didn't call the police just now because you only grabbed my arm, but if you try to use force or enter the Highlands condominium again, I will really call the police, okay?" Concussion hit them hard. "We beg you don't do that," they said. "If I even catch a glimpse of you, I'll report it. So go back to your mansion that you got from Dad." "Got it," I added firmly. I went back to my apartment and told my mother about the exchange with the Jackson, and I wonder what she would say. Mom smiled. That must have known what he was doing when able to Jackson and her inherit the house. "Lily, even though Dad was indifferent about money, he cared for me a lot," Mom reassured me. "Of course," I said. I was overjoyed to hear that my father felt that way about me. When my mom heard about the inheritance from Jackson, she muttered, "Are you going this far?" because she realized that he had given a severe punishment to Jackson, who was always self-centered. "You know how Dad felt, Mom," I responded. "Of course, dear. We've been together for 38 years. I know what he's thinking without him saying a word. Besides, I was under the impression that the Jacksons were looking after my father. However, it turns out they hardly ever visited him. When I visited my dad, he said there's no need for you to go out of your way, and I took his words to heart, so I had it all wrong about that, and I feel awful. I want to apologize. Don't fret, Lily, your feelings are reaching Dad in heaven. The ones who should worrying are the Jacksons. I bet they'll struggle to find a beer, Mom reassured me. The truth in my mom's previously mischievous words was now becoming a reality for the Jackson, but they couldn't find a beer. They continued to live in it even a year later, and in the midst of all this, Olivia accidentally started a grease fire while cooking chicken in the house. It quickly burned down, and their life is going to get even tougher. Well, while I understand the predicament, the remnants of their house is a sad sight. Living in the Highlands condominium is absolutely fantastic, and I can only feel gratitude toward my mother. I've been paying my mom rent every month, but it seems she's been saving it all to ensure we won't face hardship in the future. Every day is filled with peace and happiness as I live with my incredible mother and kind husband, and as I visited my father's grave, I vowed to him that I would continue to repay my mother's kindness. So, Reddit, after hearing everything, tell me honestly, do you think I handled this situation correctly? What would you have done differently? I'm really curious to hear your opinions and perspectives on this whole crazy situation, and would appreciate any advice or insights you might have on how to move forward from here. Given everything that has transpired, as I am still dealing with the emotional fallout of it all every single day, so please share your honest thoughts.